My background is 15 years experience in sales and sales management, predominantly in the selling of complex business-to-business services such as management consulting, outsourcing and IT solutions. And during my 7 years in management consulting, I also gained experience in business change and operational performance improvement, which has really brought another dynamic to my expertise. There are a number of different areas where I have experience or capability, such as strategy development, performance management, value-based selling, etc. I think the key is that I don't bring out-of-the-box solutions, but rather take a much more practical approach based on my own experience, which is different to the textbook theory or overcomplicated methodologies you can sometimes get from marketing, IT, or sales training consultants. I offer a combination of consultancy and interim based solutions, but there really is no set way of working, and I'm happy to sit down and work out exactly what will work best for each individual client. But to try and put some definition around it, consultancy typically is more project based or objective based work and may involve the diagnosis, design, and then implementation of change. So, helping diagnose a problem or the opportunity and potential for improvement, helping to design a new strategy or solution or a new value proposition, process, system, etc. And then implementing change, which will really involve the management, coaching, and education of people to help change behaviour. An interim may be more business as usual, helping to fill a resource gap, such as taking on a sales leadership role or helping manage and improve the performance of a sales team. And one of the things I get asked a lot is if I can actually take on an active senior sales role or a key account role, where a client needs some experienced resource to quickly capitalise on a market opportunity or solve a resource challenge, or they just need some extra firepower in the sales team to drive growth. And the answer is generally yes. And the nature of being independent and self-employed is that I have real flexibility, and I'm always happy to discuss any ideas or requirements that you may have to see if I can add value. In terms of the value I offer, well, that can only truly be defined once I have a better understanding of your situation and your requirements. But I think it helps to consider my solutions in the context of the typical options anyone will have when they're looking to improve sales performance. So typically you could have a number of choices. You could look to employ an established consulting firm, you could look to bring a training company to deliver a training program, or you could look to recruit new sales resource. And established consulting firms will certainly bring expertise and good ideas, but they won't necessarily bring practical sales experience. And there's always a risk you may get an out-of-the-box solution or sometimes more theory than results. I think where consulting firms are particularly useful is if you're embarking on a large complex transformation, because they bring the scale and the experience to manage that large scale change, which is something which I cannot bring. The key to remember with all consulting firms, well, certainly the established ones, is the cost, and they're likely to be 2 to 5 times the cost of the solutions that I can offer. In terms of a training program, the real challenge here is that 80% of training doesn't really have any lasting impact, and that's been demonstrated from research. And I think the key to driving behavioural change and improving the performance of your people is really coaching, which can take 3 to 4 months and should be delivered by the capability of your own sales managers. So the challenge with training is that you're unlikely to see any real return on the investment. And so the other option is to employ new people and new sales resource. And this is probably the most common approach. But if you actually consider the total cost of employment, once you've taken into account the agent fees, the company benefits, the time spent on the recruitment process, and then also, secondly, the commitment of time and resource that will need to go into that individual to bring them up to speed and to give them an opportunity to deliver. And thirdly, then how often the senior hires actually don't work out or fail to meet expectations, then suddenly this option can actually seem quite expensive and quite high risk. And the final option is to consider an interim or independent consultant such as myself. And this way you get a blended approach that brings some consultancy, can help educate and develop the capability of your team. And interestingly, interim and independent consultancy has been growing quite rapidly over the past 5 years, but not so much in a sales or business development environment, but that's something which is expected to change. And really that's not surprising when you consider the ability for someone to bring new ideas, expertise, and deliver that on a project basis without the need for any major commitment from the client, then really this can be seen as a much lower risk and high value solution. So in summary, I'm able to offer flexible, low risk and high reward solutions. Flexible because they're tailored and they can be turned off and on. Low risk because there's no need for major commitment or red tape. And high reward because clients benefit from broad expertise and experience, and the ability to improve sales capability or uplift sales performance can be worth hundreds of thousands or hundreds of millions depending on the client's business. But of course, everyone's situation is different. So if you have any problems, ideas, or challenges that you'd like to discuss, please get in touch and we can explore how I may be able to help.